Welcome to the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Elizabeth. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome back to the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast. Today we're going to talk about the Farm Bill. And the Farm Bill, in case you're not familiar with it, is the primary ag and food policy tool for the federal government. It was originally created during the Great Depression to provide financial assistance to farmers who were struggling due to low prices and excessive supply. And so since 1933, farm bills have included titles including commodity programs, trade, rural development, conservation, ag research, and food and nutrition programs. So in December, the 2018 Farm Bill was passed, and now it's time for us to start understanding how this new Farm Bill is going to impact decision-making over the next couple of years.
So today we have with us Sam Custer, he's the Darke County Extension Educator, and Ben Brown with the Department of Agricultural, Environmental, and Developmental Economics. So you guys have put together this wonderful Farm Bill Summit in Versailles, Ohio, and what were your goals with that? What was kind of the reasoning for doing this?
Well, thanks Amanda and Elizabeth for allowing us to be part of your program today. Back in 2014, we held a 2014 Farm Bill Summit, and we were excited to be able to share back then that Farm Bill at that point in time. And there were a lot of changes with Darke County, PLC, and some of the other programs. So when the 18 Farm Bill was signed by the President in December, Dudley Lips from Farm Credit Mid-America and myself reached out to Ben to talk about, can we do another one of these programs here in Western Ohio? And ultimately, my goal for the program is to make available high influence economists from the county or from the country that can share with our farmers, with our agribusiness people, with our leaders, their latest interpretations of the Farm Bill to make that available to growers. So that was my ultimate goal. Ben, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so when Sam and Dudley reached out, I thought it was a great idea. I wasn't here in 2014 when they did it the last time, but in kind of looking through the notes, I can see why it was so popular at the time. And and we're hopeful that this is going to be another strong event. And we have faith and belief that it is going to be. And probably my biggest goal for the meeting is mostly just one, making sure that the educators at Ohio State, but then also producers within the western part of the state, eastern part of Indiana, even parts of Kentucky, have the information to make the best decisions possible. But I think probably my ultimate goal is to showcase that Ohio State is a land-grant institution. It is the flagship institution of the state of Ohio, and that we're here to partner with producers and agribusinesses to be there for them to make the decisions they need and just really kind of kick off and reestablish, even though in some cases it's established, but just kind of reinforce that principle that Ohio State is a partner in agriculture within this state. So
You've got guys have brought in some really big names from across the country. Why don't you introduce those folks a little bit?
So we're bringing back Jonathan Koppas. Jonathan was here in 2014. Jonathan is at the University of Illinois, works in policy there, and he is a local person from the county, so it's good to have him back. He has a history as being an administrator at the FSA in Washington, D.C., so he'll be with us. And we're fortunate that Ben was able to line up also Keith Coble out of Mississippi State and Patrick Westhoff out of the University of Missouri to present.
Yeah, we had, to be fully honest, sometimes you go after the best speakers hoping that you get one out of three, and we were lucky that all three said yes. And we think we've got the best lineup we could possibly have, and especially in the topic areas of conservation, crop insurance, and commodity programs. All three of them have strengths in the respective areas, but they also specialize in the respective commodity tiles that we're going to ask them to speak on. And I think we're just really fortunate to have this high caliber of a lineup, but I also think that we probably have the best lineup we could have possibly gotten at this time. So
that's really exciting, guys. I know it's a great program. And Ohio State's put in a lot of effort to get this done, but obviously it's not just Ohio State. Who are the other partners who made this event possible?
Yeah, so we reached out to the University of Kentucky and Purdue University, especially so for Kentucky, it was their Agriculture Economics Department. For Purdue University, it was their Extension Department, but then also their Ag Econ Department and the Center for Commercial Agriculture, led by Jim Minert up there. And so we were fortunate that they wanted to partner with us as well. Farm Credit Mid-America has been a partner from the get-go with Dudley and kicking this off. And they were big partners in 2014. They are again this year, but we're really excited to bring Purdue and Kentucky into the mix as well. And then on top of that, we reached out, and almost all of our ag organizations within the state of Ohio are helping us with this. Ohio Corn and Wheat, Ohio Soybean, the Ohio Agribusiness Association, the Ohio Farm Service Agency, Ohio Farm Bureau, and I'm sure I'm missing somebody, the Ohio Dairy Producers, and Ohio AgNet and Country Journal, and Ohio Pork. And I think that might be all of them. I don't know. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. I might have to go back and look. But we've been fortunate that all of them have been really receptive to this, and that they've just really embraced it and helped us, get the word out. Ohio Country Journal and Ohio AgNet is going to help us live stream the event. So for those people that cannot make it, as we try to take this outside the bounds of Darke County to service the whole state of Ohio, one of the things that we realized was that for some producers, especially in like Northeast Ohio, where small dairy farms are prevalent and small and large-scale dairies are prevalent, we realized that they probably weren't going to be able to drive all the way to Darke County and to take part of the program. So one of our goals was to make sure it was accessible to them, and Ohio AgNet is providing us with that link to make it more accessible to people from further distances away. So
for folks who missed out on the event, is there a recording available they can watch now?
Yes. So thanks to our friends at Ohio's Country Journal and Ohio AgNet, they recorded the event for us. It'll be located on our website within the Agriculture Economics Department. It'll be on Ohio Extension's website, but then it'll also be on Farm Credit's. Farm Credit will have access to it, and Purdue University will have access to it as well. So, we hope that people get good use out of it and learn something from it, and we just. Again, this was kind of something we tried different this year to make the event more accessible to people that couldn't physically make it all the way home. So my family in Missouri is watching it as well.
Excellent. We'll include the links for those recordings in the description.
Yeah, for sure. And Sam, you're working with the Versailles schools here, and the FFA kids are helping out too.
Right. It's really good to partner with the future leaders of agriculture. So we're back at Versailles schools again. They have the largest cafeteria in our county, so we think we can squeeze 600 people in to that facility. So they were a great tool for us and great partners. Great to work with the FFA ag students to be able to set up the facilities for us, tear down. We did provide marinated pork loin sandwiches, and the students helped serve all those. So yeah, Versailles School is just a great organization to work with.
And probably one of the nicest high schools I've ever been in.
It's
a nice facility, and they've got a lot of really good things happening in Versailles.
Very cool.
So when we talk about understanding and helping our growers, farmers maybe listening to this today, understand this new farm bill, what are the resources that Extension is planning to provide?
Well, just like in 2014, if you recall back 5 years ago, in 2014, Extension educators from across the state worked in partnership with local FSA offices and provided educational opportunities in each one of the counties to share the latest changes in the Farm Bill and things that they needed to consider as they made those decisions. And specifically, we talked about Ark County. PLC was some of the biggest part of that conversation. And educators from across the state had went through professional development to prepare for that programming, to be able to share that information so that growers could make educated decisions for their own good. So just like in 14, We will be doing that again, and Ben can explain more as he was the author of a grant to do that.
Yeah, so our goal is to make sure that everybody in the state has access to information that can help them make the decision. So one of the ways that we're trying to do this was through the Farm Bill Summit and the online videos and the material that's been put out from that. But then we also want to do individual county meetings, help bring some of that information a little closer to home potentially, and have people have access to it in ways. And so our ultimate goal is that we can do a Farm Bill county meeting in every county across the state, all 88. Some counties, there's more producers, and so we'll likely need to do multiple meetings. Some, we might only do one, but our goal is that we have that footprint across the state. And it does take some funds to do this. So we were successful in applying for and receiving a grant that'll help us, pay for travel costs of presenters and stuff to get that information out around the state. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be a pretty tight window. As of now, we don't necessarily know what the enrollment date's going to be for these different programs. But I think we're going to be, trying to get information in terms of dates, but also choice information out roughly at about the same time. And so, we're going to have to continue to build and work with producers to make sure that they're aware of the changes and the quick pace of the changing environment within farm policy, just to make sure everybody's on the same page and everybody's making the best decision that ultimately leads to more profitable farms and farm sustainability in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important to get to those meetings because things have changed a lot since 2014, and when we were making those decisions, ARC was definitely the obvious choice for most of our producers. With this farm bill and the environment we're in, it's a lot more of a toss-up, a lot more thought is going to have to go into that decision. So those meetings, I think, will be critical for helping.
Yeah, one of the things that we don't necessarily know as of yet, there were some changes. A lot of the programs remain the same, or the same options, I guess, are still available to producers is what I meant to say. But there were some changes in the mix. We're right now, there's always two phases to every farm bill. There's the actual passage of the bill and getting it through Congress, or getting a bill that, the president will sign or that he'll veto and Congress will pass. That happened in 2008 when President Bush vetoed the bill and then Congress overrode the veto. And so, that's the first phase, is just getting it through the process. The second phase is the implementation stage. Obviously, Congress just writes the bill, and then it's left up to the USDA agencies or the Department of Ag agencies to actually interpret what that bill says and how they're going to use the funds to meet the text of the bill, right? And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And there's, in every bill, there's always a lot of wordage that that says left up to the secretary or his designee. That happens quite frequently, and so we're left to kind of make assumptions based on what we think and what history would tell us those changes will be. But we are waiting for a couple of those tweaks within the ARC County and PLC formulas that'll kind of help tease out where we see enrollment and producer decision being. But until then, we're kind of left just talking about here's the options that are available, here's where we see potential formulas ending up, but we won't know until official rules are released by the Farm Service Agency out of DC.
So we had it seemed like a complete overhaul back in 2014, a lot of changes. We've seen some changes, not quite as extensive, but like Elizabeth mentioned, we're in a completely different economic climate as well. Why don't we talk about the things that did change? Start with the titles. You mentioned earlier when we were talking before we started recording about trade having some money put towards it more than in past years.
Yeah, so I think before diving into the individual titles, I think it's helpful to understand how bills are scored. There's lots of unknowns. There's always unknowns. In today's climate with our trade negotiations and even really just our economy, there's probably a few more unknowns than usual, right? And so what happens is the Congressional Budget Office lays out a 10-year budget. And this is based on, current policies, the way they see the country evolving in terms of economic rates of growth, and that sets the baseline. That's what we call a baseline. And then what they do is they take the policy that was given and they add it on top of the baseline, and that budget either moves up for a positive gain or it moves down for a negative gain. Or another way to say it is if it moves up, the bill is going to spend more money than the old policy was going to spend. If it goes down, it's going to spend less than what the old policies were going to spend. And so that's kind of how it starts off. And they do this so we can compare bills apples to apples instead of apples to oranges, right? And this bill, is about a $70 million difference. Now that might seem like a lot, but out of an $865 billion bill, billion with a B, right? 70 million is less than 1%, and so we consider that budget neutral. Congress is considering this bill budget neutral, but I don't want the illusion to be that there weren't changes within the bill. We saw some major changes within the titles, trade being the one. It's important to understand that the trade title of the Farm Bill does not take into account the Trans-Pacific Partnership or the North America Free Trade Agreement or the newly negotiated United States, Mexico, Canada Free Trade Agreement. But what the trade title actually does is it allows partnerships with trade organizations and agriculture organizations like the Grains Council or the Soybean Export Council to actually have offices overseas to where they can partner together and help promote U.S. products. That's ultimately what we're talking about within the trade title. But again, Congress just sets the law, right? They write the law, they don't actually implement it. And I think there is some concern. I think they're hearing from their legislators, or they heard from their legislators back home, that there was concern that these trade agreements were negatively affecting farming community. The hope is that eventually, somewhere down the road, we'll start to see the rewards of that, reap the benefits. But right now there is some pressures due to the trade renegotiations. And so I think this was Congress's way to put some money to help bolster international marketing, if you will, of U.S. ag products. And so we saw a big increase, probably one of the biggest increases in the trade title we've ever seen. The other title that got a really nice bump was the miscellaneous title.
Before we move on, so has anything like that really been pushed before, this international marketing strategy? It's
been growing. It has. And one of the challenges is that people often debate is, what should be the role of government? And some legislators will advocate that the role of government isn't to go and advertise for U.S. products overseas. Some would say that yes, this is helping build our growth and our market share around the world. The nice thing about the trade title of the Farm Bill is it partners with trade organizations like, as I mentioned, the U.S. Grains Council, the Soybean Export Council, or the Dairy Export Council. Those groups to hold offices and have staff overseas. Another quick terminology, and I think something that's good to understand, is Farm Bills only authorize spending. Every year, Congress has to go in and pass an appropriations bill that actually then allows the money to be spent. The Farm Bill just authorizes it, and then the appropriators come in and appropriate the money. The other thing that happens within a Farm Bill is there's mandatory spending, meaning money that has to be spent, and then spending that's authorized, but it could be appropriated in other things. The trade title has always been just other spending, right? It has been money that's been authorized for trade, but it has not been earmarked for a specific purpose. This Farm Bill went in and almost made all of the trade title mandatory spending, meaning that it has to be spent for certain marketing programs overseas. It has to be used to develop those market shares. And so I think that was, again, I think it was Congress and their knowledge about, international markets are important for our farm community. International markets are important for our commodity prices here in the United States, and so I think they were willing to support that. And so yes, they've been a part of it for a while, and we've seen different support levels throughout history. But I think this one really solidified the importance of international markets for our commodities here in the United States.
Yeah, that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out and if it has an effect, for sure.
Mm-hmm. The other big title, and I just want to go really quick, the other big title that received a lot of attention was the miscellaneous title. The miscellaneous title had the largest increase of spending of all the 12 titles. This is not something that's maybe surprising to people because we're getting a more diverse Congress all the time, more people coming without an ag background, but they have interest in something that could be related to agriculture or related to food processing, right? They have interest in areas of conservation, but they might not directly come from production agriculture. And that's just in relation to ag, but Congress is becoming more diverse all the time in terms of their interest. And so to get these big spending bills through Congress, you've got to find a way to relate to each individual that's going to be voting, right? You've got to build these coalitions. And in ag in an ag industry where we have 2% of the population involved in agriculture, and we only have 34 of the 435 congressional districts that are considered rural, right? We have to be creative in how we strategically align ourselves with people to make sure we can get enough votes to pass the things that are important for our rural economy. So the miscellaneous title serves as kind of like the catch-all of everything that can't fit in the other titles, right? And it's become larger, and it's becoming more like an omnibus spending bill, right? We're going to throw some stuff in that all kind of relates together to help get votes. Now, some people would advocate that that's not smart policy, right? That we're going to throw things that don't really matter. But I would argue that this year's miscellaneous title actually addressed some very critical issues that we've maybe been lacking. The big one being related to the Animal Disease Preparedness Bank and our vaccine authority. So basically, it helps prevent against a biosecurity attack against our livestock, right? So right now we're seeing African swine fever wipe out a huge chunk of the herd in East Asia. And the fear is we don't want that to come to the United States, the fear of the economic damage it do here in the United States. And so the attention to add disease preparedness program, but then also a vaccine bank to help fight if we do have an outbreak, we have enough vaccines to counter an attack. I think that's really important. The other thing that's included in the miscellaneous title is provisions for young farmers and ranchers. There is growing interest in finding ways and ideas to help young producers stay in agriculture or even get into agriculture. And so we saw provisions there to help with that. And then we also saw some other provisions related to livestock. We saw the wool program. So just like we have corn and soybean commodity programs in Title I of the Farm Bill, there wasn't one for wool. And so they created a program for wool, and it's housed in the miscellaneous title as well. There's some other things in there, like we can't eat dogs as meat and stuff. And so there's some things in there that might seem a little odd, right? But there was somebody in Congress that said, "I'm willing to vote for this bill if this is included," and that's where it was in. That was where it was encaptured. So,
that's very interesting.
Ben, remind me, what was the actual vote coming out of Senate and House, or not ballpark figure? Because it was like unbelievable.
Majority. For the partisan nature that we think of Congress right now, right? I bet if you asked 20 people on the street, 19 of them would say that we have a very partisan, meaning that no one supports the other side in votes. The Farm Bill was a very bipartisan vote. It was a very unified, collaborative vote. Together, the Senate passed the bill 87-13. The House passed it 369-47. If you add those yes votes together, that's the largest voting margin in favor of one farm bill in the history of farm policy. And so not only are we seeing an interest in these different titles, but there was large bipartisan support to move this bill through, which it went through a rocky period. Let's not forget that the House failed a bill earlier last fall, largely over a partisan debate, but we ended up getting a bill that was able to be attractive to a lot of legislators and move through. So good question, Sam. Thanks for asking.
So let's move on and talk about crop insurance. There's been a little bit of confusion, I think, on that end, and what's changed there?
Yeah, so a couple of things real quick, and I'll ask Sam to pipe in as well. But the crop insurance title authorizes a lot of programs that are able to be used for risk protection, production risk protection. But the interesting thing always in the crop insurance title is we get a great sense of where legislators want to see risk management in the future. And this time we see research projects to help look for products to help with grain sorghum. We see with products to help with hemp, and we see better risk management in terms of the loss ratios of different commodities and how often they trigger crop insurance payments.
So some diversification.
Yeah, and so this is related to the products themselves that are offered through risk management providers and the risk management agency. And so it's always interesting to read through the crop insurance title and kind of get a feel a little bit of where producers want to see some risk management in the future. Obviously, the crop insurance program helps oversee and helps fund the crop insurance title. Now, crop insurance is a permanently authorized program, meaning that it is authorized outside the Farm Bill and money is always flowing to it. But we get a better sense in the title of what could be coming down the line and new products to come. And I always think that's really exciting. In 2014, we had a couple new products that were maybe a little bit foreign to some people, but it allowed for some county-based revenue coverage that we hadn't had before. Now, we've had county revenue products in the past, but these were a little bit, more specific, and I think in a large scale they worked a little bit better than those old revenue plans. And we also had a thing called supplemental coverage option, which I can ask Sam to talk about as well, but basically it allows the difference between what a producer picks in terms of an individual coverage. So you can go all the way up to 86% coverage of your farm. Now, revenue reminder is price times quantity. So you're insuring against a certain quantity and a certain price. And then you can insure all the way up to 86% of that from an individual level. Now, individuals are always more variable, meaning the volatility and the difference between individuals in a county is very different from the county. The county is always a little bit more level, and so county-based revenue projects don't trigger a lot, but they offered this difference. So if I, as a producer, came in and bought a 70% individual revenue coverage, then I could buy this supplemental coverage option, which is a county-based revenue, so it doesn't trigger as frequently, for 16%. And so in theory, I'm helping get up to my 86% coverage at a cheaper cost. And that was something new. And Sam, do you want to add stuff to it?
Yeah, I would say, from what we've heard here in early 2019 during the first quarter, there's been a lot of conversation about the SCO because now for a grower to be able to be eligible to purchase SCO, they'll have to pick PLC. That's my understanding, Ben. So here we are, we're telling people as you make your crop insurance decisions that in order to get the SCO, that down the road you're going to have to pick PLC, but we're not in the position, we don't know all the details and rules and prices and so forth to be able to make a good decision on PLC versus ARC. So that's been quite the conversation out here, where we're at. We know that crop insurance salespeople have been trying to make good decisions with their people they're working with, but unknowns, kind of unusual as we look at all these commodity programs. Our growers and dairy people will have a lot of the year, especially like for dairy, they'll have 6 months of experience before they make a decision probably.
Yeah, it's important to know. So the 2014 Farm Bill ends with the 2018 marketing year for corn and soybeans, and so for corn and soybeans that goes from September 1st of 2018 all the way through August 31st of 2019. So the payment or potential payments that could be triggered this fall are still associated with the previous Farm Bill and associated with that 2018 crop. The decisions that will be made for the 2019 crop, or the crop that's going to go in the ground this summer, those will be in this new Farm Bill, and the new decisions they'll have to make. And so to kind of just state Sam's point and kind of drive home, if you're making a crop insurance choice for 2019 and you're making your commodity choices for 2019, in a perfect world, you get to make your commodity choice first, and then you'd follow up with your crop insurance choice. That's not happening this way. It's exactly the opposite way around. It's causing a little bit of confusion. There's likely to be, some people that want to enroll in a certain commodity program down the road but can't because they're limited on their PLC, or vice versa. They realize, I am going to go with PLC in my commodity program. I could have saved some money on PLC. And so we have that uneasiness, at least right now, and I'm hoping in the future the timing gets a little better worked out.
So talking about some of the other titles, one area where there's been some more changes is in conservation and the priorities around what those dollars are going to be targeted for. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure can. So conservation, again, we still see some of the same programs that we've always had within a conservation title. We see the Conservation Stewardship Program, we see the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And we see CRP, which is the set aside, allowing farmers, the conservation reserve, to set aside a portion of land and not produce it to any commodity, and instead they get a payment. We see the same programs offered, so not a whole revolutionary change, but maybe more of an evolutionary change in the conservation title. I think there is some interest, at least in Congress, to merge EQIP and the Conservation Stewardship Program together under the same budgeting authority, to where then their programs aren't overlapping and we're not offering multiple dollars for the same project. We'll have to continue to monitor that. Given some of the changes in this 2018 Farm Bill, when we get around to doing this again in 2023, 2024, I think we're going to see even more changes in the conservation title. I think this was kind of like the preamble, if you will, to what could come down the road. I think they're all going to be positive to producers, and I think some of the same programs are going to be offered. I think it's going to come down to who's funding the different proposals and what line item they fall under. As far as the Conservation Reserve Program, we had a cap at 29 million acres, or 24 million acres, sorry, not 29, 24 million acres. And, we've kind of been right around that the last 2-3 years. The interesting thing is, just like the commodity programs that we're going to get ready to talk about, the Conservation Reserve Program has not set their enrollment period. And right now the estimate is that the Conservation Reserve Program is going to have an enrollment period at the end of the year, maybe possibly even in 2020. And so we're looking at that going, okay, if producers have to wait till then to enroll some of this acreage, what happens to the land that's coming off CRP contracts right now, right? And so we're probably going to have this little bit of a period where some people might want to re-enroll their CRP programs in 2019, but they've ended their previous contract, their 10-year contract under CRP, and so they can't re-enroll because the enrollment window hasn't opened yet. So it's likely to see us fall below that 24 million cap. Now, the reason I bring this up is because Congress actually increased the cap. This was largely due to help with water quality issues and soil health. And so we saw an increase to 27 million acres. Now, in the policy world, I know how people sometimes think that Congress just makes money, but for ag policy, when a bill is as tight as what this was in terms of budget neutralness, remember we talked about budget neutral early, if you increase expenditures for one program, you've got to save money somewhere else in the bill. Now, luckily, most of the time it comes within the same title, and so we're not taking money from one title and putting it in others. But for the Conservation Reserve Program, one of the ways that they paid for that increase in acres from 24 to 27 million acres is they lowered the rental rate. So you used to be able to get 100% of your county rental rate as a payment to set aside land in conservation. Now you're only going to get 85% of the county rental rate. So it's also likely that due to the late start in conservation enrollment and also a lower rental rate, that we could see less acres involved in CRP going forward, and that could save some dollars. So we'll have to watch and keep a hold of that. But not a huge change, not a lot of major changes in the conservation title, but a lot of little things that I think could help set up the stage for the next time around. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about those new priorities around soil health and water quality, because I think in Ohio that's going to give some opportunity to get funding for projects that maybe in the past were slightly outside of what the priority areas were for these programs. So maybe in the past, if you've had a project that didn't get funded,
there might be some chances now.
Yeah.
And so here in Ohio, we have Lake Erie. We're blessed with it. It's ours. I mean, no one else has it, right? And I don't say that to be tongue in cheek. I just say that to be like, we're the only ones that get to, that have it. We're blessed to have it, and we've got to manage it as well. And the rural or the regional partnership programs for different parts of the country fall under the conservation title, to which Lake Erie, Western Lake Erie Basin is a regional partnership program. And so the increase in dollars for the conservation title, I think is going to bode well to that regional partnership in the West Lake Erie Basin. So.
Well, the commodity program names didn't change necessarily, but we've hinted at it a little bit that there might be some decisions to make between ARC and PLC. Not entirely sure what's going to be best at this point. Why don't you touch on those?
Yeah, so we do have that same option between the agriculture risk coverage, which is the revenue program, and the price loss coverage program, which is ensures and protects against a low price. part of the reason why we have these is a fundamental disagreement over what it should be the role of government, right? We talked about this just a little bit earlier in the trade title, but we have repeatedly seen people ask, should the role of government be to transition from periods of high farm income to low farm income and help people make that adjustment? Or should it be to help farms sustain against longer periods and sustained periods of low farm incomes, right? So if you think about it, the agricultural risk coverage helped transition from periods of high farm income to low farm income. That's why it was so dominant as a pick for producers, especially in corn and soybeans in the Midwest or in the heart of the country, because we were coming off those years of 2012 and 13 when incomes were really high and they were coming down, right? So we were having that transition. The price loss coverage program helps sustain against long periods of decreased farm income. And so that's why, in this period where we're at right now, it might seem like the pick should go to PLC because we have suppressed prices, and any increase we do have in terms of prices isn't going to trigger those ARC County payments. The difference then, probably what we're still waiting on, is there could be modifications to that ARC County program or the Agriculture Risk Coverage Program that help make it a little bit more attractive a little bit longer, right? So for during the next couple of years. And Congress did something that commodity groups have been advocating for a long time. Commodity groups have advocated that producers should get to pick their commodity program each year to look at the economic conditions that are coming and make a pick each year. And so we see that this year. Farmers are going to get to make a pick in 2019 for the 2019 and 2020 growing season. So a 2-year pick up front, but then every year after that, an individual pick. And we're going to have to continue to train, and we're going to have to look at economic conditions as we continue to go forward. I'm hopeful that we get some rules here pretty quick, and so we can start making some determinations about, in which cases and which scenarios might this look better for, more favorable. But overall, again, we see the same programs offered, and we'll continue to have to monitor and which one fits the best farm, the risk management plan of an individual farm. Sam, do you have anything you want to add?
I would just reiterate what Ben just shared, in that in 2014, we talked about you make a decision, you got to live with that throughout the Farm Bill program. Just to reiterate, this time we'll make a decision that'll last for 2 years, so we'll make a decision, PLC, ARC, for 2019-20, but we'll come back in 20 and make an annual decision. So it's not make a decision, put it in the filing cabinet, and forget about it. We'll need to make annual decisions on what directions we're going.
Yeah.
What about the whole, we can go back in 2020 and talk about yields at our FSA office. Ben, what is that?
That's a good thing, Sam. This has been something that we're starting to see more frequent as a yield update for the price loss coverage option. Just like in the agricultural risk coverage, if we go back and we increase the benchmark, right? So our historical revenues, it increases the chances that we're going to trigger a payment, right? Because we've increased that benchmark. Same thing happens with PLC. Is if we do choose PLC and we trigger a PLC program, farmers want to make sure they have the most accurate count of what they're actually producing, and that comes from the yield estimate. And so, back in the 90s when we had the FAIR Act that served as the 96 Farm Bill, we started talking about these base acre yields, and we've had a couple of chances now to update those to match, take into account current production values and current yields. We're going to get that again this time, but it's going to be delayed a year. And I think this was for budgetary issues. And we'll have to see if producers can make their yield update and their PLC and ARC choice at the same time at their FSA office, or if they'll actually have to go back in 2020. Because keep in mind, they won't have to make an ARC and PLC decision in 2020 because they made it in 19, right? But they could have to go back in 2020 and decide whether they want to increase those PLC yields or not. For some parts of the country, we have seen increases in yields, and so that increase will look attractive for producers. Again, a higher yield creates a higher payment. Other parts of the country haven't seen that strong of an increase in yield to qualify for a payment or a yield increase, but we'll just have to keep looking at that and see what happens. But yeah, that could actually help influence the decision this year between ARC and PLC, and we're going to have to make sure producers understand that yield update comes in the second year only, not the first year, and you have to be enrolled in PLC to take into account for that. So.
Well, for those who missed the Farm Bill Summit in person, we will, again, a reminder, post the links to the recordings in the show notes so you can access that. Thank you guys so much for organizing the summit, for your work and understanding the Farm Bill. Just want to encourage producers to stay tuned for those meetings we'll have around the state, and hopefully we'll have more information on what programs are going to look like, what payments might be coming in future years.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Agronomy and Farm Management Podcast. Join us again in 2 weeks for our next episode.